Hey, everybody, and welcome to The Brand Called You. So, listen, about 10 years ago, I got a frantic call from my cousin Rick. So, Rick was going through the financial plans and papers of our Aunt Lynn, who was in an assisted living program. And he noticed that in 1 year, she had been billed almost $250,000 over what she normally was due to exorbitant care costs. And I said, that's absolutely impossible. It can't happen because my father, Lynn's brother, twin brother, was managing her accounts and he would never allow that to happen. But of course, when we spoke to my father, he had been totally unaware. And it was the first time in my life I realized that my father had Alzheimer's or the beginning stages of it. And he had just hadn't noticed. It was such a painful thing to watch this slow, insidious process happen in my own father. Scary for me, but I can't even imagine how scary it must have been for my dad. And that's why I was so interested to talk today to our guest, Carolyn Sandel. Carolyn has kind of made it her business to help people who know they've got Alzheimer's come to terms with it, deal with it, as well as their families, among many other things. She is the principal, the CEO, the founder of Older, Stronger, Wiser Counseling in Western Massachusetts. And she provides mental health counseling to older adults and their caregivers right out of the comfort of their own homes. But before starting this agency, she had over 20 years of experience in the aging services field, including spearheading many initiatives like running one of the first assisted living facilities to become nationally accredited as an LGBTQ friendly community. So I feel like there's so much to talk to her about, and I'm really happy to have you here, Carolyn.
Thank
Welcome.
you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, my interest in talking to you is deeply personal. I lost my dad recently
I'm
after.
so sorry.
Thank you, but it was a long battle with, I think, more excruciating than his death was watching such a brilliant intellectual with so much cognitive reserve slowly become somebody I didn't really know.
Yeah.
Um, and although I reached for help, it never occurred to me that he might have been aware of his situation and frightened. And I guess my question to start with is, I feel like normally there's something in our own personal lives that draws us to go into a field. And I just wondered what that was for you.
So for me, it was really, I've always just, as I think as a young girl, I've always wanted to help people. I had a brother with special needs. And so I've always been kind of drawn to helping him and helping others. And so that's kind of, I think, just where things had started for
Well,
me.
that's a big one. That's a big one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Growing up watching, did in your own home, did a lot of the attention get diverted from you to him? Did that happen as
I
well?
mean, he needed a lot of care, and I saw my parents trying to struggle just to find him the right care. I mean, this is probably going back 40 years ago when there wasn't really much services out there. I don't think much has changed actually, unfortunately, since then.
Really?
I mean, it has, but there's still lack of services. I think a lot has happened since COVID. I think even for a lot for older adults too, especially. It's just there's not enough people out there who want to do the hands-on work anymore, is what
Um,
I'm noticing.
yeah, I'm very interested in how you shifted though to elder care. I mean,
Yeah,
what
it was a
was
fluke. It was by accident, actually. I am an LICSW in my last year, getting my master's in social work. The internship I was working with actually kids because I thought maybe I wanted to work with kids, which I realized I did not want to work with kids. But my internship fell through halfway through, and the only thing available was working in a senior housing community because a lot of social workers just really didn't have a desire to work with older adults. And I just fell in love with it. And I knew this is what I wanted to do.
what do you mean you fell in love with it? Why?
I love the people. I love the wisdom. I love learning from them. I mean, they've lived a full life. And so it just became a passion. It was just something in me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I, you know, so I mean, I'm just curious, what are some of the strategies or skills that you can employ for people who start to become aware that they are going to be losing their cognition? I mean, they still have it, but what is like some of the first things that you address? Is it fear? Is it stress? I mean, where do you begin?
I think a lot of it is just grief, the loss,
Mm.
you know, is I think also, acceptance. I think a lot of people that I've worked with, dementia, Alzheimer's has touched them in some way. So they've, had a parent or a grandparent and seen them go through the disease process, and they get very scared. Is I don't want to end up like them. I was taking care of my grandmother. I don't want to go through or have my kids or, spouse have to care for me. I think there's a lot that goes through.
But there's no real answer you have for that, do you?
Everybody's different. I mean, that's what's hard is Alzheimer's or dementia. Everybody presents different. So, and that's kind of what I try to kind of start with a lot of the times is because, your grandmother maybe forgot who she was or who you were, not necessarily means that's going to happen to you. Everybody's journey is different.
Well, give me some other strategies. I mean, I'd be very interested to know what are some of the strategies to combat that sense of grief or loss.
Yeah, a lot of it's trying to I help people take more control back of their lives. Is how do what is and this takes a bit of time, but what is your life? What do you want it to look like? Right? Who do you want to start making? Who's going to make those choices for you on certain things? Is it you? Is it a family member? Where it's just starting to have those conversations or having a conversation with your spouse or your kids. One thing that I do or suggest is coming up with maybe doing a video of who you are now. This is who I am. That's really meant for your future care. We say care partners now instead of caregivers. We're trying to kind of get away from that term. So if I start using care partners, to kind of say this is who I am, So they're showing a video and talking about who they are.
But
What's
why?
their background?
Why does it help to know who somebody was? If
Yeah.
somebody comes, you mean you're talking about a spouse, or are you talking about an aide that
So
would?
yeah, so for future caregivers, so more so if somebody was diagnosed with Alzheimer's and they know probably eventually they're going to need long-term care or they're going to have help coming in. A lot of times when people come in to do care, it ends up being very task oriented. They don't really they forget who the person is. So if they can show, okay, this is who Mary, this is Mary, right? Like she has a great personality. She was a CEO of a company. Like this is who she was. Um, I think people tend to have more empathy when caring for someone versus seeing this other person who is forgetful or
That's
who's become very
fascinating.
frail.
Yeah, it never occurred to me, but it's so. I mean, I found myself telling the aides about who my father was, but I never occurred to me that, that firsthand view of who he was would have been. I had an interesting incident happen. Um, they had a library in their apartment, and
Hmm.
it wasn't to like a childhood apartment. It was built when they moved in about, I want to say, 15 years ago. And every time I would come to visit my dad as a grown woman, he would take me into his library and he would show me his books, right? And
Hmm.
he would say, like, okay, this is the history section, this is the literature, these were written by a friend, these were, and I thought, is this his Alzheimer's that he's forgetting that he's doing this with me? And then I
Hmm.
sort of realized that he was actually giving me his life review in the only language he could understand, which is think the language of literature was like the one he was the most comfortable with.
Yeah, yeah.
And I thought that was a wonderful way to tell people about him as well.
Hmm.
So I guess metaphors and symbols and things,
Yeah.
I think. Do you ever use objects as well in terms of how to, bring somebody's spirit to life when they can't do it for themselves?
Oh, definitely, definitely. I used to, when I was working in the assisted living, I have a therapy dog, and I would bring my dog in quite a bit. And you would see people's like faces light up,
Mhm.
and it was beautiful to see. Yeah, certain things I think have different connections for different people. I think it's finding that. I think music does that quite a bit. Touch does that a bit.
What
People
is
with all like just touching somebody. People with Alzheimer's, maybe they forget who the person was, but they remember love.
Hmm.
They remember feelings. Um,
So I have a
and
question for you. So,
yeah.
so my mother doesn't have Alzheimer's, but she has a bit of, her brain is going a bit.
Mm.
She's sick and in 97 and
Wow.
her brain is going a bit. And so her short-term memory and long-term memory is bad. But the one thing, this is going to sound crazy. She's Hungarian. So the one thing that always gets her memory to activate in the strongest way is hatred.
Ah,
If I, if
interesting.
I say, what do you think about, I'll name a person who I know she doesn't like. She'll
Yeah.
suddenly light up and say, not good, And I wondered if you found that to be the case, that sometimes very strong emotions
Oh
of
yeah, definitely.
dislike as opposed to love work just as well.
Oh, oh, definitely, definitely. I've seen that, especially with the political environment. I've seen that.
Yeah. But the other thing I was very interested about is you work as well, not just with people themselves, but with their caregivers,
Hmm.
care partners, excuse
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
Um, and one of the things that I'm really interested in is the effect of stress on care partners, because um, a doctor actually said to me, just watch, cognition is one of the first things to go when somebody is stressed. And indeed, after my father passed, I saw an immediate shift in my mother's cognition.
Makes
And
sense. Yeah.
but then I had really strange reaction too. Like I got the most horrific arthritic flare up where I couldn't bend my joints and everything was swollen as if I'd had rheumatoid arthritis. My
Yeah.
neighbor told me her body ran amok after her father
Yeah.
died. And I wondered if you're, how you deal with those kinds of issues, stress issues.
It's part of, yeah, it's also part of the grief process. When people are grieving, they tend to their memory tends, that's short-term memory
So it's
goes.
true. It's
It
true
is
that it affects your.
very true. Yep, physical too. I mean, everything's so connected, right? Our body, our mind is so connected. And stress. So, I mean, I work with a lot of caregivers, and stress is the number one. And it really, I mean, affects your whole nervous system so much. So, they have a hard time, even just basic, like our basic needs, sleeping and eating, difficulty, a lot of anxiety. But then also the physical, you see a lot of physical ailments with people, who are very high stress and grief too.
So what are your strategies? I'd love to hear them. Like, help.
I mean, a lot of it, it's just acceptance and being where you're at, and a lot of self-compassion. Like one thing I teach a lot is self-compassion. I do a lot around, I use mindfulness a lot. But just accepting, like, this is hard. Like, I'm caring for my spouse 24/7, exhausted. I have all these emotions. I'm angry. I have so many times where people tell me, they feel guilt, or they maybe yelled at, their loved one, and and I'm like, it's all normal. I mean, you have to have compassion for yourself and noticing that this is a hard work.
I think I believe I read that you were also trained as a you did psychoanalysis and mindfulness. You did a lot of integrative. I mean, do you use any of those strategies?
Oh, a lot. I'm a daily meditator. For me to do the work that I'm doing, I feel like I need to be able to, um, keep healthy as well. And I use mindfulness quite a bit. So I try to teach that quite a bit.
But what does that mean? I don't know what that word means. To me, it just seems very groovy. What does it mean
Yeah.
in practical terms?
It's really just being where you're at. And one thing I kind of really try to get people to see is moments, right? And even people when working with Alzheimer's, it's life is full of moments. Like people will say to me, everything is so hard. Like everything is really difficult. And then all week, my life, I'm so depressed. Well, we go by like, well, how was yesterday? Oh, well, I saw my son. It was great. Okay. So you had a good moment. So trying to get people to look at things as moments, as yes, you're going to have these
Beautiful.
great interactions, maybe even with your loved one who has Alzheimer's, right? And you have this beautiful moment, but be with it, right? Because 10 minutes later, there may not be a great moment, right? And that's life, right? Life is full of moments.
My father used to say, cultivate the margins.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the other thing I found is I was very punishing of myself because I wasn't able to be there for friends or feel,
Mm-hmm.
even little things like, not wanting to talk to anyone, not wanting to call people back, and they, having to manage their expectations, like, please don't take it personally. I just cannot. There are days where I literally could not open my mouth to speak, let alone answer somebody's call,
Yeah.
and I think the other thing is you have to manage the fact that people expect you to behave normally and you're not in a
Oh,
normal
yeah.
time.
Well, because people don't like discomfort, right?
I was also amazed at how there was almost like a passive aggressive insensitivity. Like people would send me pictures of them sitting on a beach in Miami while they knew I was tending to a parent in hospice and another one with
Mm.
Alzheimer's. I'm thinking, what? But I wondered if that's common too, where your friends or people are so uncomfortable with your situation that
Yeah.
they almost go overboard to deny
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. People have a hard time dealing with loss, grief, because they don't want to face it themselves, or it's just something that we don't talk about, right? We don't talk about it very much in our society.
Is that something you kind of confront head on as part of
I
your?
I do that quite a bit. Yeah, a lot of pretty much with most of my older adults, and even some of my even some of my younger clients. I think it's important that we start talking about that because
Yeah.
it's part of life, right? We're all going to die. Everything living is going to die, but we don't talk about it, and so there's this fear.
Has your work helped you get closer to making peace with your own mortality?
Yeah, I've dealt with a lot of loss in my life, and so I've dealt with, and I think that's probably another reason why I probably got into some of this work that I have is dealing with my own grief, and confronting my own mortality.
So yeah, it feels like a natural progression in a
Yeah,
way.
yeah, yeah.
Do you find, I mean, you worked in Boston and now you're in Western
Mm.
Mass, pretty culturally sophisticated areas.
Yep.
You find I'm sure you've worked with people that were expats or not American. Do you find there are cultural differences in the way we deal with loss and grief and death in America versus other cultures?
That's interesting. I have worked with some, but haven't really. A lot of the views have been very similar. Yeah.
Same grief, same loss, same fear.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm also very interested in your work with LGBTQ communities among the elderly. This is new to me. I never occurred to me that there would be stigma or issues. And maybe you could articulate that a little because it's the first time I'm hearing that
Yeah.
in an elder care capacity.
So what happens a lot with older adults who are LGBTQ, they go back into the closet quite a bit. It's very common, um, because a lot of them are going into maybe facilities or communities, or if they need private care, and they are scared about being out again, about how they'll be perceived. And so that is, part of the LGBT, the SAGE, is that's part of their mission, is how do you go into communities and you educate the staff. And also we took it one step further, and is how do we educate also the other residents who live there to be
Well,
able to be an accepting community.
so what about if you're trans and so it's you've already made the transition and
Mm-hmm.
but it's pretty, would that also would they how would that be affected in an elder care facility?
I think it's more of the stigmas of the people that work there,
You mean
and
the
the
caregiving staff?
caregivers. Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely. And so I think a lot is, so people get scared about going into a, say, an assisted living, and being out was fear of, well, I won't be treated fairly, or, are people going to accept me? I remember having a resident who had lost his husband and had just moved in after 30 years, and he had no pictures of his husband in his apartment, and would call his spouse his wife that passed, because he had this fear of being judged.
oh,
It's really sad. Yeah.
wow, that's fascinating. It never even
Yeah.
occurred to me that this would be.
Yeah.
Are there special facilities just for that community?
There's some, I mean, there are ones popping up around the country, but they're kind of far in between. I mean, there's certain areas, like I think like New York and San Francisco and Boston have more mixed buildings. Boston just had their first LGBT affordable um, building that just came up. So there's not as many, and if there's people who are low income, there's not a lot of options.
And what are some of the biggest challenges you face when you go in to train staff?
I think a lot of just mixed perceptions, or a lot of it I think is religious. It kind of,
Oh,
yeah, I think it all depends. You know, where I was working in Boston, there were a lot of people working from a lot of the islands, and so a lot of it was cultural and religious. But we had some really great open conversations.
really?
And we had, I would say, 90% of the staff ended up wearing, we had these little rainbow flag pins, and everyone was wearing them proudly. It was pretty amazing. We had the LGBT flag up every June. So people really embraced it.
Do you remember any one particular person that you transformed with some new ideas?
I mean, we did this for Pride Month. We actually had the oldest drag queens come from Boston and did a whole performance, and people were, and the residents, we had all these residents who were
Great
dancing.
idea.
It was amazing. It was amazing. It was amazing. Yeah.
The other thing I'm thinking about is I moved to a co-housing community specifically because it's less lonely. And
Mm,
as an unmarried person, I thought it would be helpful to me, although it turns out many married people are reaching for that too. And I know that isolation is a big, big
yes.
problem. I mean, what are some of the other strategies because the reality is not many people are coming to visit. They are
Yep.
alone. So how do you combat that? The
I
reality.
Yeah, no, isolation is real. I think more so, I think since after COVID. Um, you
After
know,
COVID,
yeah, yes, yep.
like,
Because I think what happened is, all of a sudden, we have COVID. We're told can't leave your house, it's too dangerous. You're older adult, especially, you're more compromised. So they're home for 2 years, 3 years. They say, okay, now everyone can, right? We can start living our lives again. But those same people now have become more frail. They haven't been out. So they're scared to leave their house because they haven't been doing it every single day. So they stop seeing their friends, they stop seeing their families as much. And so that's probably one of the biggest hurdles for a lot of older adults is loneliness.
and how can you help combat that as a social worker?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we try to come up with strategies of ways to maybe
What's the
get
strategy?
to be, try to find engage, try to get engaged with people, whether it's, finding what they're interested in, and maybe encouraging them to go to a senior center or see family. Picking up the phone and talking to maybe an old friend, but really encouraging them to get out in the house and see people, I think is so important. And especially if you have dementia, you need to be around people, you need to be engaged. People with dementia do so much better with engagement and structure. And I've seen people really flourish who have dementia or Alzheimer's, and go into maybe a senior housing community, or have more people around, that they start doing better. We need people,
Yeah, I
right?
mean, I think we recently put my mother in, both of my parents were in a senior housing community, of sort of independent assisted living facility. Even though it was outrageously expensive, I think
Yes,
one of the
it's very expensive. Yes.
benefits is, just dining with other people, or
Yeah,
seeing other people in an elevator, or,
yeah,
um,
absolutely.
and it's amazing, like a simple hello.
Hmm.
It's just one more thing that you have that reminds you that
Yeah.
you're human. But I do think there are times when being isolated can be very helpful. Like, I know for me, when I was as a caregiver, sometimes
Mm.
um, to talk, it works against me. Sometimes I need to reserve all of it.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, so it's very interesting. But as we move forward in, moving forward with the increasingly aging population, I mean, what are some of the things you think we need to be thinking about, even in terms of the way we design buildings or plan?
I think there needs to be more affordable communities, because it seems like really only the more wealthier individuals are the ones who can actually afford it. Otherwise, they unfortunately end up home, or they end up in a nursing home. Um, so I think that just a lot more affordable communities, and people who are willing and wanting to work with older adults. It's a wonderful population to work with. I get so much out of it. I think other people would too, you know?
Well, I think that Western Mass is very lucky to have you.
Oh, thank you.
More like you, and I really thank you for taking the time to just share. It's such a unique field, your specialization, and I'm glad to know that it exists. And really just wish you continued success in all your work.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for taking your time to talk with me.
It was great. Thank you so much, and I wish you all the best with everything.
Thank you, Lisa.
Okay, bye, Carolyn.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.